Go for it.
So welcome as everybody's coming in. We'll give it just another minute before we start today's program on flags. So welcome again to this World Oregon webinar, and we'll be back in just a minute as we let all the participants come in. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Derek Olson. I'm the president of World Oregon, and we're excited to have you here for today's World Oregon Zoom webinar. Today's program is entitled Good Flag, Bad Flag, What They Mean and Why They Matter, with a local expert, Ted Kaye, and we're thrilled to be having him here to dive into this. I'm going to say a few opening words, especially for those who may not have joined one of our programs before, and introduce the speaker, and then we'll let Ted give his talk and encourage you to post Q&A in the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. As a reminder, we're recording this webinar for posting to YouTube later, so mind your P's and Q's on the questions. This webinar is intended for World Oregon members. If you're not a World Oregon member, we would encourage you to join after the program. Your membership helps support the costs of programs like this. At the end of the show, we'll talk about some of our upcoming programs. We have an important one tomorrow especially, but first let's dive into today's program. So again, Ted Kaye is a vexillologist, a flag expert who compiled the definitive work on flag design, a book called Good Flag, Bad Flag, and consults on the adoption of new flags at the city, state, and national level. He has edited and occasionally translated many journals, newsletters, books, and well over 1,800 articles on flags, has researched and presented papers at national and international flag studies conferences, and testified before Portland City Council in 2002 to support updating the City of Portland flag. He's currently the secretary of the North American Vexillological Association, and it is our honor to have Ted here today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to talk about Good Flag, Bad Flag, which is a book that I compiled a few years ago. And I'm going to talk to you about international flags. And if I were in a room with you, I would bring out my great big world flag. It looks like this. This is this huge flag. Big to fit in the screen, but I would hold it in front of the meeting space and use it as my poster of flags. The best thing is I'm going to put it up as the last slide of my presentation and have it up, and that's going to be the base of the Q&A. I'll be able to answer questions for you about international flags. So I'm going to pop into my PowerPoint by sharing my screen here and start the talk. I have to go all the way back, sorry. Okay, as I said, I compiled the flag guidebook, Good Flag, Bad Flag, about 15 years ago. An effort to codify the principles of good flag design. I'd like to explain them to you. As Derek said, vexillology is the study of flags. The Latin word vexillum for flag combined with the Greek logia for study of gives us vexillology. Although some people say it's vexilly. First order of business is to define what is a flag. A flag's purpose is basically form follows function. So it helps to agree on what a flag is. It represents a place or an organization or a person, generally on a rectangular piece of cloth, to be seen at a distance, often moving, and from both sides. And it's reproduced in quantity and in many sizes. That helps us understand what drives good flag. to create the book, I reviewed the flag design thoughts of about 20 experts who'd written on the subject. I distilled their wisdom into a short booklet. My goal was to inform the flag selection committee, the person at the flag shop counter, or the flag design contest organizers. I aimed for short and sweet. My big contribution in this book was providing examples of flags that followed the principles along with flags that didn't follow the principles, hence the idea of good flag, bad flag. It's really shorthand for flag that follows the principle, flag that doesn't follow the principle. Here are the 5 principles of flag design: simplicity, meaningful symbolism, few colors, no lettering or seals. Follow these 5 principles will lead to a successful flag that accomplishes its purpose. Flags flap, flags drape. Flags must be seen from a distance and from the opposite side. Under these circumstances, only simple designs make effective flags. Furthermore, complicated flags cost more to make, which often can limit how widely they're used. Here we have Bangladesh, an example of keeping it simple. With 2 strong colors and simple symbol, this rising sun of independence. Note that it's slightly offset to the hoist. This flag succeeds admirably. In Turkmenistan, it has a very complicated rug design with 5 traditional patterns. It would be better to leave that off and keep the simplicity. Symbolism can be in the form of the chart or the main graphic element, in the meaning of the color, or sometimes even shapes or the layout of the parts of the flag. Usually a simple process. Avoid those less likely to be representative or unique. Here, flag of the Iroquois Confederacy, which shows Hiawatha's belt. This is for the 5 tribes since before 16. This appears on a traditional blue of wampum shell beads. The Navajo Nation's flag has over 20 graphic elements that overwhelm the viewer, and none are large enough to be seen easily. Flag colors are red, blue, green, yellow, and black. They can range from dark to light. Occasionally, other colors are also used, but they're seldom needed in a good design. A flag should also reproduce well in gray, that is, black and shades. More than 4 colors are hard to distinguish, and the flag is unnecessarily complicated and expensive. Flag fabric comes in a relatively limited number of colors, another to stick to the basics. In these examples, New Mexico's flag and red restates Spanish heritage. The sun symbol comes from the Zia Indians. Notice in the symbol, the colors have symbolism. On the other hand, Virginia, there are 18 different colors on official flag specification. Not only are they difficult to distinguish, but having so many colors drives up the manufacturing costs.
Ted, this is Derek. I'm just jumping in because we're getting a little bit of hiccups in your internet signal. Just a reminder to our attendees that this is the some of the fun and excitement of doing a Zoom program. So bear with us. It usually evens out over time.
Thank you. I've been describing the basic principles of flag design and gone through examples of 3. I'm on the 4th one. No lettering or words defeat the purpose. Why not just write USA on the flag? You would laugh if you saw a flag that said that. A flag is a graphic symbol. Lettering is nearly impossible to read from a distance. It's hard to sew and it's difficult to reproduce on lapel pin size. And words are not reversible. That forces double or triple thickness fabric. Otherwise, the flag of Kansas says Sasnak on the back. And seals were designed for plain paper to be read at close range. Very few are effect flags. They're too detailed. it's better to use some element from the seal as a symbol. And some logos work, some don't. And I like to say that the seal is a symbol of the government, but the flag is the symbol of the people. Another reason to avoid seals. Here on the flag of South Carolina, the palmetto tree represents the palmetto state, far better than the state seal could. Crescent moon, actually that's just a crescent. The crescent is in the position of honor. On the other hand, that South Dakota's flag uses a seal and lettering. The name of the state actually appears. And the last principle is distinctiveness. Sometimes good designs are already taken. So you need to be distinctive from other designs. However, a flag's symbols and colors and shapes can recall other flags. That's a way to show heritage or solidarity or connectedness. For example, in the flag of Liberia, it echoes the flag of the United States because it was founded by freed slaves from America. It reflects that heritage with a similar flag. Vermont, there's any distinctiveness here because Vermont's flag is virtually identical to 23 states that put a seal on a blue background. It fails on the distinctiveness side. Excited about flags and flag design, I recommend Roman Mars's TED, which is entitled, Why City Flags May Be the Worst Design Thing You've Never Noticed. He gave the talk on the main TED Talk stage in Vancouver, BC in 2015. And his talk is one of the most popular ones ever made at a TED conference. It's been seen over 1 million times. And he described good and bad flag design and flag designs. In his talk, he identified great city flag designs and funds. And at the end, he said to the audience, find out what your city flag is. If you like it, fly it. Even if it's a bad design, if you like it, fly it. But if it's a poor design and you don't like it, it changed. He said there's a bad flag designs out there and they must be stopped. So he called on people to address their flags. He has spurred a wave of city flag redesign efforts across the country. My colleagues and I are tracking over 300 cities that have changed their flag or in the process of changing their flags. So enough about city flags and city flags. I want to segue in world flags, international flags. This is a flag design that was created by a couple New Yorkers and Portlanders, the Carroll brothers, and they call this the world flag. You can find this on their website, theworldflag.org, no periods, theflag.org. And they
So, hello, everyone. It looks like we're having some technical problems here.
Okay.
Great. Sorry, Ted, we lost you there for a second and you're back on. Sorry to everyone in the audience. Thanks for bearing with us.
Okay. Is my screen shared?
At the moment, no. It's your.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen again. Thank you, Zoom. Thank you, technology.
Yes, that works.
So this is where I shift into answering your questions about flags. And I'm let me give you a challenge. I use that great big flag. This one is 5 feet by 8 feet when it's fully extended, when I talk to school groups. And I'm going to be interested in comparing your questions to those that I get from kindergartners, first and second graders who are pretty insightful in their questions about flags. So channel your inner elementary school child, or put on your World Oregon hat and let me have some questions about flags. Tim or Derek, you might have one or two ready to ask me. So,
hey Ted, this is Tim DeRoche, Director of Programs. You know, I'm looking at this image and it brings up two questions immediately. One is, why is there so much red? And then the other one would be, are there any countries that do not have flags?
I'll answer those in reverse order because the second question is a lot easier. I know of no country that does not have a flag. That seems to be a basic piece of nationhood. And let me riff on that. In the United States, we have roughly 500 tribal entities, if you count the Alaska villages, and nearly all of them have flags. Those flags were adopted by tribes in the United States in really for three reasons. The first was this basic reason of sovereignty, that if we're a sovereign nation, we should have a flag. So the executive orders and the laws in the 1970s and 80s that said that the federal government needed to deal with tribes as sovereign nations meant that they adopted sovereign symbols, starting with flags. By the way, the second two waves of flag adoption were when the Indian gaming laws went through and tribes could build casinos. They'd usually been battling their states, and so they said, we're not going to fly the state flag in front of our casino. We need to fly our own flag. And so tribes adopted flags to fly in front of their casinos. And then the third major impetus for flag adoption among tribes was during the Lewis and Clark bicentennial and the run-up to it, as the 56 encounter tribes that Lewis and Clark went through their territories, they nearly all adopted flags in order to be ready for the Lewis and Clark bicentennial. So your first question, Tim, was why is there so much red? Red is the most popular color in flags, and it goes back to a couple things, human physiology and dye technology. The colors black and red are the very first ones that human physiology can recognize. Darkness and perhaps fire and blood. It's been tested that in early languages, in very primitive languages, if there are only two colors named, it's black and red. So red has this fundamental visceral reaction. We have a fundamental visceral reaction to red. And so it's a very powerful color to use on flags. And also red dyes can be made pretty fast, and red dyes developed pretty early, and they were less expensive than, say, purple. And so red became popular for that reason as well. That's the pragmatic reason. The sociocultural reason is red can be used to represent things like the blood of the martyrs who sacrificed for the revolution and things like that. The last reason that red is a common color in flags is that the major colonial powers had red in their flags. And so flags in the rest of the world that was colonized by Great Britain, France, Germany, even the United States and its exposure across the world, flags of the colonial powers had red in them. And so that was part of what people who left the colonial rule saw as common in flags. So lots of good reasons for red on flags.
So we've got a question from Sarah, and she wonders what happens when a nation's form of government changes due to a coup or revolution of some sort, and does the flag change to reflect that there's something new going on?
That's a question that can be answered regionally. Let me compare Africa to South America. Generally speaking, in Africa, the flag is associated with the regime of the country. Often in Africa, with the independence movements of the 50s and 60s and the decolonization, the flag of the country derived from the flag of the opposition party or the independence movement. And that group, if that's still in power, that's the flag associated with the regime. In Africa, when there is regime change, often there's an idea that the flag itself should change because the flag is associated with the regime as opposed to the nation itself. Let me contrast that with South America, where the independence movements were in the early 1800s, so a different era there, but also the flags in South American countries are used to represent the country. And when there's an opposition to a regime that's in power, the opposition will typically fly the national flag to say, we are the legitimate bearers of this flag. You are illegitimate. We should be in charge with this flag. And when they do overcome the regime and become the new regime, that flag is used to legitimize that new regime. So the question is very topical, and it has different answers based on the region.
Well, you know, thinking about that, with the fall of the Soviet Union, what did that do to all of those independent countries who had been under the Soviet Union, and was there a massive, you know, land rush for flag designers?
Yes and no. When the USSR dissolved into the Commonwealth of Independent States and then that dissolved, the former Soviet republics, all of them, except for Russia, well, including Russia, eventually, all of them changed their flags. They had before, during the Soviet rule from the 1920s, 1990, they had a uniform system of flag design that was mostly red, had a hammer and sickle in it, and some different patterns along the baseline of the flag that differed for each republic. Once the USSR and the CIS broke up, the countries all chose different flags, but in nearly all the cases, they went back to flags that they'd had before they came under Soviet rule, especially the ones that were farther to the west. So the Baltic states, for example, all went back to pre-1921 flags. Even Russia went back to its pre-Soviet flag of horizontal stripes of white, blue, and red.
So in the popular imagination, flag burning, I think of flag burning as being associated with two sort of pivotal moments. One is, of course, the Iranian Revolution in '79, but also the 60s. And, you know, there was so much emotion tied to seeing the flag burn. What can you tell us about the history of burning the flag? And did it exist a lot before the 60s when we really saw it coming into our sort of our public memory?
I think the 60s is the time to think about flag burning becoming a way to protest. Couple things. Let me quote Molly Ivins first, who has a great thing to say about that. She was referring to the folks who wanted to ban flag burning as a mode of protest. She said, I prefer someone who wraps himself in the Constitution and burns the flag to someone who wraps himself in the flag and burns the Constitution. We can guess who she had in mind, but there was a court case, I think Texas v. Johnson, where a protester in the 1980s had burned the US flag, and he was arrested. This was in Texas at one of the political conventions. And he was arrested under a Texas statute that banned burning the flag. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that burning the flag was protected by the First Amendment right of free expression. And some people will argue that burning the flag actually, or letting people burn the flag, actually honors the principles that the flag represents, kind of a meta argument. There are others, many others, who will argue that that's desecration. Now, it's interesting to think about the word desecration. Desecration, you can only desecrate something that is sacred. Desecrate something that is sacred. I have a colleague named Scott Gunter who argues that the flag is the centerpiece of the US civil religion. We don't have a queen, we don't have a monarchy to honor. We put the flag in the middle of our civil religion, and we pledge allegiance to the flag and to the country for which it stands. That's why there's so much emotion about taking a knee at an NFL game and things like that. So let me loop back to flag burning. You're thinking about Middle East protests. We see burning the US flag as a form of protest often now. But when the Danish cartoon scandal went where the Danish cartoonist did the prophet in a way that was offensive, they were burning Danish flags in the Middle East. And of course they burn Israeli flags. There's a company in Iran whose sole product is US and Israeli flags ready to burn. So let me close the flag burning to say that in the United States, it is not illegal to burn the flag. In fact, in the United States Flag Code, which is the etiquette around how to fly and use the US flag, the proper way to dispose of a flag after it's worn and tattered is to burn it. It is in our flag code that we should burn our flag. What's the difference between burning a flag in protest and burning a flag respectfully when it's been worn out? It's only what you're thinking while you're doing the flag, right? So consider that.
So what about the mythology of the American flag? We all grew up hearing about Betsy Ross, and people had to basically focus group writing a constitution. Did we focus group the American flag, and how long did it take us to be happy with that?
Well, the flag as we know it, 13 red and white stripes with a blue field in the upper left-hand corner and stars on it, was developed because of the need for flags by ships. Flags in the era of the Revolution were needed to identify nationality at sea. They weren't really a land thing at nearly as much as at sea. So it was the Marine Subcommittee of the Continental Congress that came up with a flag for the United States on June 14th, 1777. That's the day we celebrate as Flag Day. Flag Day is actually the birthday of the American flag. This was in Philadelphia, and there was an upholsterer in Philadelphia, Betsy Ross, Elizabeth Griscom Ross, who had done upholstery for the Washington family, and she was making flags for the Pennsylvania Navy. It's very likely that the first flag, or one of the first flags, might have been made by her because she was local and she was known. And it may well be that it was Betsy Ross who suggested, or at least first sewed, a flag with 5-pointed stars rather than the typical 6-pointed stars of the era. It's not true that she designed the flag. The flag was designed very likely by a member of the Marine Subcommittee named Francis Hopkinson, but Betsy Ross may have sewn the first flag and may have had a hand in the five-pointed star. Many years later, almost 100 years later, her grandson, Mr. Canby, gave a talk to the Historical Society in Pennsylvania and recounted the story that he'd heard from his aged grandmother when he was 8, where she sort of conflated knowing, visiting George Washington and making the flag. And he took that story and turned it into a national story just in time for the Centennial Exposition of 1876. And that's when the Betsy Ross myth was solidified. And so everybody from then on thinks of Betsy Ross as part of the genesis of our flag.
So it's really hard to talk about flags without referencing the moment that we're in, with so much protest and so much polarization, and really symbols being used to drive wedges between people. And we were talking before the show, I say show like we're on television, isn't that wonderful? But we were talking about the Confederate flag. So I know that there are some cases pending, and you've been involved in a couple. I'm wondering if you could talk about those, but also what about the state flags that will need to be remade if they remove the Confederate battle image out of their state flag?
Good. Let me talk a little bit about the Confederate flag. The first thing to know is that the flag that's most familiar to people, a rectangular flag, red background, blue and white, cross with the stars, white stars on it, is a very obscure flag of the Confederacy. It's arguably 6th or 10th in the pantheon of Confederate flags. That's not the national flag of the Confederacy. It's not even the Confederate battle flag. The Confederacy started without a national flag, so it used the Bonnie blue flag, a big blue flag with a white star in the middle. You can actually see it today. Just coincidentally, it's the flag of Somalia, three flags down from the center of the 3 flags down from the map in this big world flag. But the Bonnie blue flag represented the Confederacy until March of 1861, when William Porcher Miles, a congressman from South Carolina, I think, ran the committee that adopted a national flag. And the first national flag was known as the Stars and Bars. It purposefully echoed the flag of the United States because people in the South wanted symbolism that linked them to the common heritage. So it had red, white, red stripes and a blue canton, a blue rectangle in the upper left-hand corner, and stars. It started out with 7 stars for the first 7 states to secede. And they added stars as states seceded, but that was the first national flag of the Confederacy. The second national flag came about because the first national flag looked like the Union flag on the battlefield. And because it was such a challenge on the battlefield, the Army of Northern Virginia came up with a completely different flag, the Confederate battle flag, which actually was William Porcher Miles' own design national flag. So they repurposed it as the battle flag for the Army of Northern Virginia, and it was a square red, blue with white stars on it, with white edging around it. And that was the flag that the Army of Northern Virginia, Lee's army, took into battle. That was so popular and so distinctive from the Union flag, that became the canton, the upper left-hand corner of the second national flag of the Confederacy, which was a big white flag with the Confederate battle flag in the corner. The problem with that flag was that it looked too much like a flag of surrender because it was mostly white. And when it hung limp, it looked like troops were surrendering. So the third Confederate national flag came about, in March of 1865, just before the end of the war, they put a red stripe on the end of the flag to distinguish it. But here we have 5 flags I've described: the Bonnie Blue flag, the first, second, third flags, national flags of the Confederacy, and the battle flag. Where the heck does this rectangular version that looks sort of like the battle flag but without the white edging come in? Well, historically, that's the Confederate Navy Jack. A jack is a small flag. A jack, like a jackknife, is a small knife. A jack flag, a jack, is a flag that's flown on the bow of a ship when it's in port. There's a lot of action on the back of a ship when you're in port, and you don't want to hang your big ensign off the back there. So there's a small flag that's put on the front of a ship that shows what nationality it is. That flag is a rectangular version of the battle flag without the wedging. So when the guy drives his pickup down the street with the Confederate flag on it, he's flying this second order flag that was really the Confederate Naval Jack. Nothing to do with symbolizing the nation of the Confederacy in the way that is probably meant. So, but that flag became very popular first with the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in the 20s, and with the Dixiecrats in the late 40s and the early 50s, and with the opposition to the civil rights movement in the 1950s. And in fact, Georgia legislators redesigned their flag in 1956 in direct opposition to the civil rights movement to make the square battle flag 2/3 of the Georgia state flag. Mississippi had had the battle flag on its design since the 1890s. It was the first resurgence of the Jim Crow post-Reconstruction South. At this point, Georgia has changed its flag. It changed it in the early 2000s. And after the shooting in Charleston, where the shooter had the Confederate flag in some of his images that had posted, there was a big current backlash against the Confederate flag. And that led to Governor Nikki Haley in South Carolina taking the flag down from the Confederate monument on the grounds of the state capitol in South Carolina, in Columbia. There's a famous incident where Bree Newsom, an activist, a Black woman, hiked up that flagpole and tore it down, immediately arrested, but a couple days later, Nikki Haley had it moved to a museum. Today, Mississippi is the last state flag with the Confederate battle flag on it. Some other southern states have symbols that are reminiscent of the Confederacy, but they have different attributions. For example, Florida's flag is white with a red cross on it. That's called a saltire. But Mississippi's is the last one. What's going on in Mississippi in the last couple of years, actually last 3-4 years, is a young woman, an artist named Lauren Stennis, has designed an alternative flag for the state of Mississippi. It's, imagine it's sort of like the Canadian flag, where there's a red bar on either side, and in the middle is a big white section, big white square. And in the white section is a big blue star, which is the reverse of the Bonnie Blue flag, and 19 blue stars surrounding it. It's Mississippi being the 20th state to join the Union, that's the 20 stars. And that flag is known as the Stennis flag. And the kicker here is that, yes, indeed, Lauren Stennis is the granddaughter of Senator John Stennis, the arch segregationist, major player in the US Senate in the 50s and 60s. And the arch segregationist's granddaughter has designed a flag to replace what in effect is a segregationist flag that Mississippi now flies. And just today, 6 hours ago, the Mississippi Press reported that that flag's getting a bill by both sides of the aisle in the Mississippi legislature. So we may see some flag change in Mississippi very soon.
So without getting too political, because as a reminder to everyone out there, World Oregon is a nonpartisan organization. But I'm curious, when you vexillologists sit around with whatever you drink, Ovaltine or scotch or whatever, and you talk about flags, we oftentimes see the Confederate flag being flown by quote unquote patriots. And I'm curious what a bunch of flag thinkers make of this, considering its historical reference to basically Civil War and Revolution.
Well, there are obviously many different opinions about these incidents among the flag people. First, we are students of flags. We're not advocates for flags. Advocates for certain design, change the flag, and so on. But we are the scholars. And for my family, for example, when my nephews and sons and others were taught Kaepernick taking a knee, they're debating it. They're all excited about it. I was just very interested in the phenomenon of why is it that this is so important? Why is it that this is stirring such emotion on both sides? There's something about the sociological aspect related to flags that is very, very interesting to us. Now, there's a sector of to this that you intimate. That is, for people who appreciate a flag for its historical meaning and was used historically, and then sees it used in a way by people that one might not agree with, those people, you might feel betrayed. So some examples of that are flag. The United Confederacy love the Confederate battle flag because of their great-great-grandfathers and it's part of their heritage. And they hate it that it's been hyped by people who want to use it as a symbol of hate rather than heritage. The same thing goes with the GAD. For the GAD flag is the yellow flag with a snake on it that says "Don't tread on me," purposed by the Tea Party. But for people who have historical flags of Revolutionary War era flags, saying, "Wait a minute, you're detracting from my interpretation of history." And now even the so-called Betsy Ross design, that's the original U.S. flag purportedly with the circle of stars, that some people have said, well, that's the flag used during the Revolution and that's associated, we had slavery then, therefore it's a bad flag. The Nike had to withdraw the shoe that had that flag on it because of Kaepernick's objections to it. So people who are excited about American history and the place of that flag in the history feel kind of betrayed. Wait a minute, you stole my flag to use for a political reason. So I'm not talking about flag scholars here, but those who are the people who value those flags in their historical roles, and there's overlap between those two groups.
Well, having been born in Vermont and being very proud of the Green Mountain Boys, I was always a little bothered by that. But on that same token, we see a lot of commodification of the flag. We see a lot of accessorizing of the flag. We see the flag on clothes and paper plates and is the flag public domain? And is this seen as disrespectful or homage? And can you think of another country that markets their flag on everything you could possibly imagine as much as we do?
Well, let me work that backwards. I don't think the country markets the flag. I think the people of the country market the flag. I think Americans, because you could argue we have a civil religion that's focused on the flag, it's front and center for us. And we are sort of at the far end of the extreme in terms of our flag use. In some other countries, the flag is much more identified with the government rather than with the people. For example, in some countries, if you saw the national flag on a building, you would assume that a government building. It wouldn't occur to people in that country that someone was just flying that flag to be patriotic or honor some kind of national day. In fact, up until recently in India, it was illegal for an Indian citizen to fly the Indian flag. The flag was limited to government use. So those are two extremes. As I said, the United States is sort of towards the far end of the extreme. Also have a very distinctive and remixable graphic design to our flag. Let me back up and go back to the first part of my talk about good flag design. I'm sometimes asked, does the United States flag follow those 5 basic principles? And the answer is no. It's actually, it started out doing so, but once it got up to 50 stars on the field there, you really can't see that detail from a distance. And then when I'm asked, well, if you were to redesign the American flag, what would you do? I say, I would go back to 13 stars in the canton. I would put the 13 stars, not in a circle, but in the original Francis Hopkinson design of 5 rows of 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. So that's 13, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. And those stars could be a lot bigger and they'd show up. It'd still be the same graphic elements of white stars on a blue field and red and white stripes, but it would be a more effective design. Interestingly, I was looking at the logo of the US Olympic Committee last time we went through the Olympics, and that's the design they used for the American flag. They figured out this little US flag under the Olympic rings, and if they put all 50 stars on it, that just blur together. So they have actually adopted the Francis Hopkinson 1777 version of the American flag in their public iconography. So back to the flag. Stars and stripes are very remixable graphic elements. And that's one of the reasons that the flag is so effective. I think no other flag gets used more in clothing. If you Google flags and bikinis, there's just this huge. But once you start doing that, you'll find people wear their flags in many countries in clothing. So there are some exceptions. Saudi Arabia has Allah's name on it, and it is creating the flag to put it on clothing. There was a couple World Cups ago where soccer balls were marketed with the flags of the countries of all the teams that were going to the World Cup. And that included Saudi Arabia. And there was a huge uproar in Saudi Arabia because its flag was on the ball that shoes were going to kick. They had to recall all the balls because it was blasphemy. So back to you for another question.
Well, we're coming up on the time, and clearly, you know, your critique of the American flag says to me you really, you know, maybe you just really hate America. But no, I'm kind of curious. As someone who has spent years looking at flags, do you have a favorite? And if you had been able to design any one flag, which one maybe would it have been?
Well, I'll answer the second one because I really don't have I have favorites that represent design and such like that. But years ago, I was asked to be the technical advisor to the National Flag Committee of Fiji. The Prime Minister wanted the British Union Jack off the flag. It was no longer a colony and hadn't been for 60 years, no, 55 years. So they wanted to take the Union Jack off, and I was not only advisor to the committee, but I was a member of the committee and was asked to run the deliberations of it. And we ended up with potential flags for Fiji that were outstanding. And one of them in particular I really liked, which represented a rising sun on the flag. Imagine a quarter of a sun circle with rays coming out of the top corner of a blue field. Fiji's current flag has a very distinctive medium blue color. It's actually referred to in its national anthem. And putting that medium blue on the flag with a quarter sun coming out of the top corner of the flag in yellow would have been a great flag for Fiji. Unfortunately, the government had other things come up with a hurricane that ravaged Fiji, and its rugby sevens won the world championship, and so they under the old flag, and so flag change was abandoned in Fiji. But if I had to say which flag I've been involved with that I most like, it would have been that flag designed for Fiji.
Great. Well, you know what, Ted, this has been phenomenal. And I think what you've pointed out is that design matters, but design matters in so many different ways, both emotionally and symbolically. And I think it's one of those things we don't really ever think about. I mean, we all walk by American flags every day. I mean, if you work in the World Organ Office, you probably walk by a lot of other different flags every day. And it is a lot of food for thought. And right now, we're seeing a lot of people holding on to what the meaning and the symbolism of those flags is. And I just want to say thank you for taking part in this. And I'm going to hand things back to Derek to take us home.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks, Ted. That was a fascinating discussion, and encourage folks who are interested to check out his book and also the TED Talk that he mentioned to learn more. And if you want a pop culture version of this, I encourage you to watch a rerun of Big Bang Theory with Fun with Flags with Sheldon Cooper, which we were chatting about before the show, and it's a mock podcast they have where they dive into the history and the meaning of flags. So Ted, it's been wonderful having you here. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And just for our World Organ audience, encourage you to engage with some of our other programs coming up. We have a very powerful webinar tomorrow at noon on combating systemic racism. How can we do better? On Thursday at noon, we have one on preventing the next pandemic, the intersection of wildlife and human interaction, and talking about poaching with our partners at the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance. And then our big fundraiser has gone virtual and is going to be happening June 27th online. So you can find information for all those at our website, worldorgan.org. Thank you for your support. Thanks for attending. Ted, thanks again, and have a great night, everyone.